My name is Brooklyn Price, and I'm going to be reading The Limited Roles of Women. History has always shown a connection to art and writing in many ways. Kate Chopin's The Story of an Hour makes a statement about the historical issue involving the limiting roles society has put against women. These expectations have been put on women since the early years of the world, and they have shown to stay true in history. To start, Chopin makes it very clear and apparent that her story has a direct and straight statement involving a women's rights issue that has been an issue in history for many years. In The Story of an Hour, Chopin states when she abandoned herself, a little whispered word escaped from her slightly parted lips. She said it over and over under her breath, free, free, free. The vacant stare and the look of terror that had followed it went from her eyes. They stayed keen and bright. Her pulses beat fast, and the coursing blood warmed and relaxed every inch of her body. After the tragic railroad accident that has killed Mrs. Mallard's husband, Brentley, Mrs. Mallard does not know how to feel. She has excused herself and gone to the bathroom to have a rest and think about everything. When she realizes that her husband being gone forever, she is finally free. Looking at this evidence and the way Mrs. Mallard reacts when her husband is dead, not being sad but relieved, it proves that the point that this short story is making a statement about the limited rights of women. As seen in Mrs. Mallard's reaction, when her husband dies, she was very afraid of him. She was not going to do something herself to mediate what seemed like an abusive situation with her husband, but rather wait for something to happen to him because she was just so afraid of something he would do to her. This contributes to the historical issue because of the oppression going on in this marriage between this man and woman. This statement about this historical issue in this short story shows what has happened to women for years, and it is still an ongoing issue. And Chopin depicted what exactly happens in this issue perfectly. Chopin's connection from this short story and this historical injustice can prove that a historical statement and lesson can be shown through writing and can be shown through fictional characters. Following this, Chopin shows how she connects her short story to making a statement about women's rights by using the perfect amount of imagery to describe the situation. In The Story of an Hour, Chopin states, she was young with a fair, calm face whose lines bespoke repression and even a certain strength. But now there was a dull stare in her eyes, whose gaze was fixed away off yonder on one of those patches of blue sky. It was not a glance of reflection, but rather indicated a suspicion of intelligent thought. Mrs. Mallard was trying to understand what she had just been told. Her husband was dead. She distracts herself by staring out of the window at the sky, but not in reflection of the situation, but realizing how different everything would be for her. This evidence can show that this relates to the historical issue because in this time frame, women are expected to be devastated about their husband's loss, but Mrs. Mallard was the opposite. Instead of feeling grief, she feels like she can experience a new life. This symbolizes all of the time she has been held down by her husband and all of the limited freedom she received. This can prove that in this time frame, women had very limited rights, and in this case, Mrs. Mallard's rights were limited to what her husband wanted her to do, and that was the same for many wives. Chopin's use of imagery used in this situation to describe how the historical issues of women's rights are displayed in her short story. Lastly, Chopin shows how, in her short story, she depicts an image of a limit on women's rights because of the main character, Mrs. Mallard, feels as though she is living under a higher power in her own house. In The Story of an Hour, Kate Chopin states that for Mrs. Mallard, there would be no one to live for during those coming years. She would live for herself. There would be no powerful will bending hers in the blind persistence which men and women believe they have the right to impose a private will upon a fellow creature. Mrs. Mallard is saying that her living for herself is very different and not like her, and it is like a new beginning for her. She also finds that she will be able to have her own opinions, freedoms, and rights without someone, her husband, telling her otherwise. Lastly, Mrs. Mallard brings up the societal habit that men and women feel the need to force their opinion upon each other, which is what Mr. Mallard did to her. This can prove how in society it is a norm that men are higher up and better than women, and that is exactly what Mr. Mallard thinks. This can show that since men think they are better than women, they feel the need to limit their rights overall. Using this, I can link the short story to the statement that women have always had very limited rights, and Chopin has highlighted this. Kate Chopin writes a short story about a woman whose husband has died in a tragic accident, but the wife does not react in the expected way. This is because her life was limited to him. Chopin's short story makes a statement about the historical issue of women's rights being limited for years upon end. This short story can prove a bigger lesson overall within history and how women's rights have always been treated without care. Thank you.